Millionaire was shocked when the food truck girl ignored him until he realized his childhood friend. Before we explore all the details of this incredible story, tell us where you're following us from and the time. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing, and let's embark on this journey together. She knew she shouldn't recognize that voice, but she did. The pre-dawn Chicago air bit through Alana Brooks's jacket as she unlocked the silver food truck parked on the corner of Madison and Wells. At 35, her movements carried the practiced efficiency of someone who'd learned that every minute counted when you were building something from nothing. Her dark skin glowed under the streetlight, and her natural hair was pulled back in a neat bun that would survive the day's hustle. She wore simple jeans and a burgundy sweater that brought out the warmth in her brown eyes that held both determination and the weight of dreams deferred. Another day, another chance, she whispered to herself, the same mantra her mother used to say when times got tough. The food truck, Mama's Kitchen, wasn't much to look at from the outside. The paint was fading in places, and the sign needed touching up. But inside, everything was spotless, organized with the precision of someone who understood that excellence wasn't about expensive equipment, it was about heart. Alana had inherited more than just a business from her mother 3 years ago. She'd inherited a legacy of serving comfort food that reminded people of home. By 7 a.m., the morning rush was in full swing. Construction workers grabbed coffee and breakfast sandwiches. Office workers in wrinkled shirts ordered quick lunches to go. Alana served each customer with a genuine smile, remembering their usual orders, asking about their families. This wasn't just business. This was community. The lunch crowd thinned around 2, giving Alana a moment to catch her breath. She wiped down the counter and glanced at the photos taped to the wall, her mother laughing behind the same counter, arms covered in flour, eyes bright with joy. Sometimes Alana could still hear her voice. "Baby, we might not have much, but we got each other and we got pride. That's worth more than all the money in the world." The afternoon sun was beginning to set when the sleek black Mercedes pulled up. Alana barely glanced up. Fancy cars weren't unusual in this part of downtown, though their owners rarely stopped at her truck. She was focused on prepping for the dinner crowd when she heard footsteps approaching. "Excuse me." The voice was deep, confident, with that particular cadence of someone used to being heard the first time. Alana looked up from chopping onions, and for a split second, her knife paused mid-cut. The man standing at her window was everything the movies promised wealthy men should be. Tall, probably 6'2", with broad shoulders that filled out his charcoal suit perfectly. His hair was dark, with just a touch of silver at the temples, and his blue eyes were the kind that seemed to see everything. Strong jawline, expensive watch, shoes that probably cost more than Alana made in a month. He was handsome in that polished, untouchable way that made regular people feel small. But there was something else, something familiar in the way he carried himself, in the slight tilt of his head when he was thinking. Something that made her chest tight with a memory she'd buried long ago. "I'll take whatever you recommend," he said, flashing the kind of smile that probably opened doors and hearts across the city. Alana's expression didn't change. She'd seen plenty of smooth-talking men in expensive suits. They thought charm was a credit card that worked everywhere. "Hamburgers $8, comes with fries," she said flatly, not returning the smile. Ethan Walker, though she didn't know his name yet, seemed taken aback by her indifference. He was used to reactions when he spoke to women. Blushing, giggling, the occasional phone number written on a napkin. This woman looked at him like he was just another customer interrupting her day. "I was thinking something more special," he tried again, leaning slightly against the window frame. "What would you eat if you were really hungry?" "The hamburger," Alana repeated, her tone growing cooler. $8. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, maybe even intrigue. When was the last time someone had been so completely unimpressed by him? "You know," he said, studying her face more carefully, "there's something about you that seems familiar?" Alana finished, her voice sharp enough to cut. "Yeah, well, all food truck workers probably look the same to people like you." The words hit harder than she'd intended, and she saw him flinch slightly. Good. Let him feel a fraction of what she'd felt all those years ago. But then he did something unexpected. Instead of walking away offended, instead of making some cutting remark about her attitude, he smiled. Not the polished, practiced smile from before, but something smaller, more genuine. "1 hamburger then," he said quietly. "Please." Alana turned away to prepare his order, her hands moving automatically while her mind raced. There was something about his voice when he said, "please," something younger, more vulnerable, something that reminded her of long summer afternoons and promises that turned to dust. She placed the burger and fries in a container and slid it across the counter. $8. He handed her a $20 bill. "Keep the change." "I don't need charity," Alana said, already reaching for his change. "It's not charity," he replied, his blue eyes meeting hers directly for the first time. "It's a tip for good service." "I didn't give you good service." "No," he admitted, that genuine smile returning. "But you gave me honest service. That's rarer than you think." He took his food and walked back toward his car, but at the last moment, he turned around. "I'll probably be back tomorrow," he called out. "Same time." Alana didn't answer. She watched him drive away in his expensive car, back to whatever gilded world he came from. But her hands were shaking slightly as she closed the window, and she couldn't shake the feeling that her carefully ordered world was about to change forever. Because some ghosts don't stay buried. They come back hungry. The past has a way of finding you when you least expect it. And he was sitting in her living room. Alana's hands trembled as she turned the key to her apartment door. The small one-bedroom place in Pilsen wasn't much. Exposed brick walls she'd painted white, second-hand furniture she'd carefully arranged to feel like home, and plants on every windowsill that caught the afternoon light. But it was hers, earned with every early morning and late night at the food truck. She kicked off her work boots and sank into her grandmother's old armchair, the one piece of furniture that predated her mother's death. The burgundy fabric was worn but soft, and it still smelled faintly of the lavender perfume her grandmother used to wear. Alana pulled her knees to her chest and tried to quiet the storm in her mind. Ethan Walker. She'd Googled him the moment she got home, her fingers hovering over the keyboard before finally typing his name. The search results painted the picture she'd expected. Walker Development Group, one of Chicago's most successful real estate firms. Net worth estimated at $42 million. Bachelor, philanthropist. The Chicago Tribune had called him the city's most eligible millionaire just last month. But all Alana could see was the 10-year-old boy with scraped knees and two big dreams. They'd grown up 3 blocks from each other in Humboldt Park, back when the neighborhood was rough around the edges, but still had heart. Ethan lived with his grandmother after his parents died in a car accident when he was 8. Mrs. Walker was a sweet woman who worked double shifts at the hospital and trusted the neighborhood kids to look out for each other. Alana remembered the first time she saw him, sitting alone on the front steps of the yellow house on Palmer Street, staring at nothing with those same blue eyes. She'd been 9, all knobby knees and wild curls, carrying a plate of her mother's cornbread. "My mama says food helps when people are sad," she'd announced, plopping down beside him. "I'm not sad," he'd lied, but he'd taken the cornbread anyway. They became inseparable after that. Summers spent running through sprinklers, winters building snow forts, afternoons at the corner store sharing candy they'd pooled their allowances to buy. Ethan was quiet and thoughtful, always reading books about business and buildings. Alana was the dreamer, talking about opening a restaurant someday, maybe traveling the world. "When we're grown up," Ethan had said one evening when they were 15, sitting on the fire escape outside her bedroom window, "I'm gonna build you the most beautiful restaurant in the whole city, with big windows and your name on the sign. Promise?" Alana had asked, her heart doing somersaults she was too young to understand. "Promise," he'd whispered, and then he'd kissed her for the first time, soft and sweet under the summer stars. That was the night everything changed. And 6 months later, it was the night that made his leaving hurt so much more. Alana wiped away tears she didn't realize had fallen. Mrs. Walker had gotten sick that winter, cancer, moving fast and unforgiving. Ethan had applied for every scholarship, every program that would get him out of Chicago and into college. When Northwestern accepted him with a full ride, everyone celebrated. Everyone except Alana. "It's just 4 years," he'd promised the night before he left. I'll come back for you." But 4 years became 6. 6 became 10. 10 became 18. And postcards became phone calls, became silence. Her mother had tried to soften the blow. "Baby, sometimes people outgrow where they come from. Doesn't mean they don't love you, just means they love something else more." Now he was back, standing at her food truck like no time had passed, like he hadn't left her waiting for calls that never came, like he hadn't missed her mother's funeral or her struggles to keep the business alive. Her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend, Carmen. "Girl, you okay? You seemed weird when you left the truck today." Alana typed back quickly, "Fine, long day. Talk tomorrow." But she wasn't fine. Seeing Ethan had ripped open wounds she'd thought had healed. The successful businessman in the expensive suit was everything he'd dreamed of becoming, and she was, what? Still serving food from a truck, still in the same neighborhood, still carrying the same hurt. She walked to her bathroom and stared at herself in the mirror. Her natural hair had come loose from its bun, creating a soft halo around her face. Her skin was clear and smooth, her lips full, her dark eyes expressive, even when she tried to guard them. She wasn't the awkward teenager he'd left behind. She'd grown into herself, confident in her own skin, proud of what she'd built, secure in who she was. So why did seeing him make her feel 15 again? The knock on her door came just as she was heating up leftover soup for dinner. Alana froze, her spoon halfway to her mouth. It was after 8 p.m. Who would be visiting this late? She looked through the peephole, and her heart stopped. Ethan stood in the hallway, still in his suit, but with his tie loosened and his hair slightly mussed. He was holding something in his hands. Flowers, she realized. White roses, her favorite, though he probably didn't remember that. "Alana?" His voice came through the door, uncertain. "I know you're home. I can see the light under the door." She pressed her back against the wall, closing her eyes. She could pretend she wasn't there. Wait him out. He'd eventually leave, go back to his Mercedes and his millions and his life that didn't include food trucks or girls from the old neighborhood. "Please," he said, and there was something raw in his voice that made her chest ache. "I just want to talk. 5 minutes." Against every instinct telling her to stay hidden, Alana opened the door. He looked different up close. Older, yes, but also more human somehow. His perfect hair was disheveled, and there were worry lines around his eyes that hadn't been there at 18. "How did you find my address?" she asked, not moving from the doorway. He paused, looking almost embarrassed. "I still remember where your mom lived. I drove by, saw the truck wasn't there, figured you might live nearby. Asked around." "Asked who?" "Mrs. Rodriguez at the corner market. She recognized me." Of course she did. Mrs. Rodriguez had known them both as children, had probably watched them grow up from her spot behind the counter. "What do you want, Ethan?" The question came out tireder than she'd intended. He held out the roses. "I want to know why you hate me." And in that moment, looking at the flowers that meant he remembered more than she thought, Alana realized the mistake that would change everything. She was about to let him in. Some conversations change everything. This was one of them. Alana stepped back, her bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. Ethan followed her inside, his presence filling her small living room like he'd never left. He was too tall for the space, too polished, too much of everything she'd spent years trying not to think about. "Nice place," he said quietly, taking in the exposed brick walls, the plants catching the lamplight, the framed photos of her and her mother scattered on the bookshelf. "It's not much." The words came out defensive, and she hated herself for it. "I didn't mean—" He stopped, running a hand through his hair. "Everything I say is coming out wrong." Alana crossed her arms over her chest, suddenly aware that she was wearing an old Northwestern t-shirt, his alma mater, though she'd bought it at a thrift store years after he'd left. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. "You wanted 5 minutes," she said. "Clock's ticking." Ethan set the roses on her coffee table, next to a well-worn copy of Their Eyes Were Watching God and a mug that proclaimed, "World's Okayest Cook." The domestic details seemed to fascinate him, as if he was trying to piece together the life she'd built without him. "You look—" he started, then stopped. "God, Alana, you're beautiful. Don't." The word came out sharper than she'd intended. "Don't do that. Don't come here with flowers and compliments and expect me to melt. I'm not 17 anymore." "No," he agreed, his blue eyes studying her face. "You're not. You're stronger, confident. The girl I knew was brave, but the woman standing in front of me is formidable." Despite herself, Alana felt a flutter of warmth in her chest. She pushed it down ruthlessly. "What do you want, Ethan?" He was quiet for a long moment, his hands shoved deep in his suit pockets. "I want to know why you looked at me today like I was a stranger." "Aren't you?" The question hung between them like a challenge. Ethan moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and sophisticated that was nothing like the drugstore soap he used to wear. "I'm still me," he said softly. Alana laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Are you because the boy I knew wouldn't have driven past my mother's funeral in a Mercedes without stopping?" The color drained from his face. "What?" "March 15th, 2019. St. Augustine's Church on Division Street. I looked for you in every face that walked through those doors." Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "You promised you'd come back, Ethan. You promised me a lot of things. I didn't know." His voice was barely above a whisper. Jesus, Alana, I didn't know she was gone. If I had, you would have what? Sent flowers? A sympathy card with your business logo on it? The cruelty of her words surprised them both. Ethan took a step back as if she'd slapped him, and Alana immediately regretted the venom in her voice. But 18 years of hurt had to go somewhere. That's not fair, he said quietly. Fair? The word erupted from her like a dam breaking. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been a phone call when you decided Northwestern was more important than us. Fair would have been telling me you'd outgrown the girl from the neighborhood, instead of letting me wait like a fool for someone who was never coming home. I did come home. The words exploded from him with surprising force. I came home every summer, for 3 years, Alana. I went to your mother's house, to the old places we used to hang out. You were never there. I was working, she shot back. Some of us couldn't afford to take summers off. That's not... He stopped, closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, they were filled with a pain that made her chest ache. I tried to find you. God, I tried so hard. Not hard enough. The silence stretched between them, heavy with years of miscommunication and missed chances. Alana could hear the neighbors upstairs walking around, the distant hum of traffic, the sound of her own heart beating too fast. Your mother moved, Ethan said finally. After my sophomore year. I came back and the house was empty. New family living there. I asked around, but no one knew where you'd gone. Alana's anger flickered, confusion taking its place. We moved to Pilsen. Mama's job at the clinic. I didn't know about any clinic. I thought maybe you'd moved out of the city, gone to college somewhere. I even hired... He stopped abruptly. You hired what? Nothing. It doesn't matter now. But it did matter. Alana could see it in the way he wouldn't meet her eyes, in the tension in his shoulders. Tell me. Ethan sat down heavily on her second-hand couch, his expensive suit looking absurdly out of place against the colorful throw pillows she'd bought at a street fair. I hired a private investigator, he admitted. Senior year of college. I was going crazy not knowing what happened to you. The PI found out about your mother's job, tracked you to Pilsen, but when he went to the address... What address? Kedzie and 18th, small apartment building. Alana's blood ran cold. That was temporary. We were only there 6 months while Mama saved up for the security deposit on the place on 21st Street. The landlord said you'd moved out without leaving a forwarding address. Skipped rent. We didn't skip rent. Alana's voice was deadly quiet. There was a fire in the building. We lost everything and had to leave. The landlord kept our deposit and blamed us for damages that weren't our fault. The truth hit them both at the same time. They'd been living parallel lives of missing each other, of looking in the wrong places at the wrong times, of carrying hurt that had been built on a foundation of miscommunication. Oh God, Ethan whispered. All these years I thought you hated me. I thought you'd moved on and didn't want to be found. And I thought you'd forgotten me the minute you saw your first sorority girl. They stared at each other across the small living room that suddenly felt enormous. 18 years of anger and pain and longing stretched between them like a chasm neither knew how to cross. I never forgot you, Ethan said, his voice raw. Not for one single day. Alana felt tears threatening and blinked them back furiously. She couldn't cry. Not now. Not when she was finally getting answers to questions that had haunted her for nearly 2 decades. Then why didn't you try harder? She whispered. But even as the words left her mouth, she realized the terrible truth. Maybe he had. Sometimes the hardest person to forgive is yourself. The silence in Alana's living room was deafening. She stood frozen by the window, her back to Ethan, watching the streetlights flicker on as evening settled over the neighborhood. Her reflection stared back at her. A woman caught between the girl she used to be and the person she'd fought to become. Say something. Ethan's voice came from behind her, rough with emotion. Alana closed her eyes. For 18 years, she'd crafted a perfect narrative in her mind. Ethan Walker, the boy who'd promised her the world and then disappeared into his privileged life without a backward glance. It was easier that way. Cleaner. The villain was clear-cut, and her anger had somewhere to live. But now the story was crumbling, and she didn't know what to do with all the hurt that had nowhere to go. I used to drive by Northwestern, she whispered, her breath fogging the glass. During my lunch breaks, when I worked at the diner on Clark Street, I'd sit in my car in the parking lot and watch the students walking around laughing, carrying their expensive textbooks. I'd wonder if one of them was you. She heard him move closer but didn't turn around. I was probably there, he said quietly. I spent most of my time in the library. I couldn't afford to go out like the other kids. You had a full scholarship, full tuition, books, housing, food. That was on me. I worked 3 jobs just to survive. The surprise in her voice was audible. 3 jobs? Campus bookstore, weekend security guard, and I tutored rich kids in math. It's ironic, right? Me teaching the sons and daughters of millionaires how to balance equations while I ate ramen for dinner every night. Alana finally turned to face him. He'd loosened his tie completely now, and his hair was disheveled from running his hands through it. He looked younger somehow, more like the boy she remembered. I pictured you partying, she admitted, living it up with trust fund babies, forgetting all about the girl you left behind. Ethan's laugh was bitter. I was too busy trying not to flunk out. Do you know what imposter syndrome feels like, Alana? Walking into classrooms full of kids who'd been prepped for Ivy League schools since kindergarten, while you're trying to hide the fact that you bought your clothes at Goodwill? The honesty in his voice cracked something open inside her chest. All these years, she'd painted him as the one who'd escaped to an easier life, but maybe that wasn't the whole truth. You could have written, she said, but the accusation had lost its bite. With what address? I wrote 12 letters that first year and had nowhere to send them. He pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, and handed it to her. I still have them. Alana stared at the screen. There, in a folder labeled simply A, were dozens of draft emails. The timestamps went back years, some from college, some more recent. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through subject lines. I'm sorry. Do you remember the summer we turned 16? I saw a food truck today and thought of your mom's cornbread. Happy birthday, wherever you are. You never sent them, she whispered. What was the point? I didn't know if you wanted to hear from me. Didn't know if you'd moved on, gotten married, had kids. Didn't know if reaching out would just open old wounds. Alana handed the phone back, her throat tight. I never married. The words hung between them, loaded with implication. Ethan's blue eyes searched her face and she could see him trying to read between the lines. Neither did I, he said softly. I know. I Googled you. What else did Google tell you about me? That you're worth $42 million. That Chicago magazine named you Bachelor of the Year twice. That you donate to children's charities and build affordable housing. All true, except the 42 million. It's closer to 60 now. He said it without pride, almost like a confession. Money's easier to accumulate than happiness, turns out. Poor little rich boy, Alana said, but there was no venom in it anymore. Ethan smiled for the first time since he'd walked through her door. I deserve that. She studied his face, looking for traces of the boy she'd known. He was there in the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, in the way he rubbed his jaw when he was nervous. But there were new lines too, around his eyes, across his forehead. The weight of years and choices and loneliness. Why didn't you come back after college, she asked. Really? I did. Not right after graduation. I was broke and had student loans to pay off. But 3 years later, when I got my first real job, I came home. I was going to find you, apologize, maybe see if there was still something worth saving between us. What happened? I went to your mum's old house. New family had been there for years. Went to the high school, asked around. Mrs. Patterson, remember her from the front office. She told me you'd moved away for college. Said she thought it was somewhere on the East Coast, but she wasn't sure. Alana's heart sank. Mrs. Patterson had never liked her, had always assumed she wasn't college material. I never went to college, she said quietly. Mama got sick my senior year. Cancer, just like your grandmother. I stayed home to take care of her, worked at the diner to pay for her treatments. The pain that flashed across Ethan's face was so raw it made her chest ache. God, Alana, I'm so sorry. If I had known, you would have what? Dropped everything and come running? She shook her head. You had a life to build, dreams to chase. I understood that. Did you? Because you seem pretty angry for someone who understood. The challenge in his voice sparked something in her. I was angry because I thought you didn't care. Because I thought 15 years of friendship and whatever we had between us meant nothing to you. It meant everything to me. The words came out fierce, desperate. You were my first love, Alana. My first everything. Do you think I could just forget that? Yes, the admission tore from her throat. Yes, I thought exactly that. Because if you'd really loved me, you would have found me. You would have tried harder. You would have... I did try. He was standing now, his composure finally cracking. I hired 2 different private investigators over the years. I came back to Chicago 6 times looking for you. I even went to your mother's funeral. The words hit her like a physical blow. What? March 15th, 2019, St. Augustine's. I was there, Alana. I was in the back, and I saw you in the front pew, and I couldn't. I didn't have the right. Not after all those years. Tears she'd been holding back for days finally spilled over. "You were there? I wanted to come up to you to tell you how sorry I was for your loss, to explain everything, but you looked so contained, so strong, like you didn't need anyone, especially not the guy who disappeared from your life. I needed you," she whispered, the words barely audible. "I needed you so much that day, and you were right there." And that's when they both realized that some mistakes can't be undone, but maybe, just maybe, they can be forgiven. The moment when everything changes happens in the silence between words. The tears fell freely now, 18 years of carefully constructed walls crumbling with each drop that hit Alana's hardwood floor. She covered her face with her hands, embarrassed by her vulnerability but unable to stop the flood of emotion. "Hey," Ethan's voice was impossibly gentle. "Hey, don't cry." She felt him move closer, felt the warmth of his presence before his hands touched her shoulders. The contact was electric, his palms against her arms, tentative at first, then more certain when she didn't pull away. "I'm not crying," she lied, her voice muffled by her hands. "Of course not," he agreed softly, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "That's just aggressive eyeball sweating." Despite everything, Alana laughed. It was watery and broken, but it was real. She lowered her hands to find him standing inches away, his blue eyes soft with concern and something deeper, something that looked dangerously like the love she'd thought was lost forever. "You always could make me laugh when I wanted to stay mad," she whispered. "One of my many talents," he said, his thumb catching a tear on her cheek before it could fall. Along with terrible timing and spectacularly bad communication skills, the touch of his skin against hers sent shivers down her spine. His hands were different now, calloused in places she didn't remember, bearing a thin white scar across his knuckles that hadn't been there when they were young, but they were still Ethan's hands, still the ones that had held hers through summer storms and teenage heartbreaks. "I can't do this again," she said, but she didn't step away from his touch. Do what? Hope, trust, believe that this time might be different. Her dark eyes met his, and he could see the fear swimming in their depths. "I built a good life without you, Ethan. It's simple, but it's mine. I can't let you come in and tear it apart again. I don't want to tear anything apart." His other hand came up to cup her face, his movements slow and deliberate, giving her every chance to pull away. "I want to build something new, something better. What if you leave again?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with all the vulnerability she'd tried so hard to hide. Ethan was quiet for a long moment, his thumbs tracing gentle patterns on her cheekbones. "What if I don't?" he countered. "What if this time we both stay?" "You don't understand." Alana finally stepped back, needing distance to think clearly. "You have everything. Money, success, options. I have a food truck and a one-bedroom apartment and student debt from the community college classes I took at night. We're not the same people we were at 17. "No," he agreed. "We're better, stronger. We've both been through hell and came out the other side. In very different places." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, frustration flickering across his features. "You think the money matters to me? You think I care about any of that? Doesn't it? When was the last time you rode the CTA? When was the last time you had to choose between groceries and paying the electric bill?" "Never," he admitted quietly. "You're right. I don't know what that's like anymore." "Then you don't know me anymore either." The words hit him like a physical blow, and Alana immediately regretted them. But it was too late. They were out there, hanging between them like a chasm neither knew how to cross. "That's not fair," he said finally. "Isn't it? You've spent 18 years becoming someone I've never met. I've spent 18 years becoming someone you couldn't imagine. We're strangers, Ethan. Strangers with a shared past. Then let me know you now." The intensity in his voice made her breath catch. "Let me learn who you've become. Let me show you who I am when I'm not trying to impress anyone or prove anything. And what if I don't like who you've become? Then at least we'll know." Alana walked to her kitchen, needing something to do with her hands. She filled the kettle, set it on the stove, pulled 2 mugs from the cabinet, all automatic movements that gave her time to think. Ethan followed her, leaning against the doorway, watching her with those patient blue eyes. "Tea?" she offered. "Please." She could feel his gaze on her as she moved around the small kitchen, and it made her hyper-aware of every gesture. The way she reached for the honey, the way she arranged the mugs on the counter, the way her old Northwestern t-shirt rode up slightly when she stretched for the top shelf. "You still take it with honey and no milk," he observed. "Some things don't change." The admission slipped out before she could stop it. "No," he agreed quietly. "Some things don't. The kettle whistled, and Alana busied herself with making the tea, grateful for the distraction. When she turned back to hand him a mug, she found him studying the photographs on her refrigerator. Candid shots of her and Carmen laughing, a picture of her mother behind the food truck counter, a snapshot of Alana at her community college graduation. "You graduated," he said, touching the edge of the photo. "Business administration. Took me 6 years of night classes, but I did it. I'm proud of you." The simple words made her throat tight again. Don't. Don't what? Don't be proud of me. Don't act like you were there cheering me on. You weren't. You're right, I wasn't, but I wish I had been. He turned to face her fully, his expression serious. I wish I'd been there for all of it. Your graduation, your mother's illness, the day you opened the food truck. I wish I'd been there to celebrate with you and cry with you and just be there. Wishes don't change anything. No, they don't. But choices can. Alana sipped her tea, letting the warmth spread through her chest. What kind of choices? The choice to try again. The choice to be honest about what we both want. The choice to stop being afraid of getting hurt and start being afraid of living with regret. And what do you want, Ethan? He set down his mug and looked at her with such intensity that she felt it in her bones. You, he said simply. I want you. I want to know what makes you laugh now, what keeps you up at night, what you dream about. I want to hear about your day and tell you about mine. I want to fight with you about stupid things and make up in all the best ways. I want to build something real with you, something that can survive anything life throws at us. The raw honesty in his voice made her hands shake. And what if it doesn't work? She whispered. What if we try and we just end up hurting each other again? Then at least we'll know we tried. The space between them hummed with possibility and fear, with 18 years of longing and the terrifying hope that maybe, just maybe, some love stories get a second chance. Some risks are worth taking, even when your heart is terrified. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken possibilities. Alana set her mug down with trembling hands, the ceramic clicking against the counter louder than it should have been in the quiet kitchen. Ethan's declaration hung in the air like a challenge, and she could feel him waiting, patient as he'd always been, for her to decide their fate. You make it sound so simple, she said, finally, her voice barely above a whisper. It is simple. Not easy, but simple. He moved closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of grey in his blue eyes, the way his pulse jumped in his throat. The complicated part is what we've been doing, living separate lives, carrying around all this hurt and regret. The simple part is admitting that we never stopped caring about each other. Alana laughed, but it was shaky. Caring about each other and building a relationship are two very different things. Are they? Because from where I'm standing, caring is the foundation. Everything else we can figure out together. She wanted to argue with him, wanted to list all the reasons why this was impossible. The differences in their lifestyles, the years of hurt between them, the very real possibility that they'd changed too much to find their way back to each other. But when she looked at him, really looked at him, she saw past the expensive suit and the success and the money to something deeper. He was scared too. She could see it in the way he held himself, in the slight tremor in his hands, in the vulnerability that leaked through his confident exterior. This wasn't easy for him either. What would it look like, she asked, if we tried? Hope flared in his eyes, quickly tempered by caution. I don't know, we'd have to figure it out as we go. That's not an answer. It's the only honest answer I can give you. He leaned against the counter, mirroring her position. I can tell you what I'd like it to look like. Dinner dates where we actually talk instead of just trying to impress each other. Long walks where we remember why we used to be best friends. Quiet Sunday mornings where we don't have anywhere to be except together. The picture he painted was achingly domestic, and Alana felt her carefully constructed defenses cracking. And what about the elephant in the room? She asked. Which elephant? There seemed to be several. Despite everything, she smiled. The money, Ethan. The fact that you could buy my entire block without thinking twice about it. His expression grew serious. The money is just money, Alana. It doesn't change who I am inside. Doesn't it? When was the last time you had to worry about making rent? When was the last time you looked at a menu and chose based on price instead of what you actually wanted? You're right, he admitted. I can't remember, but that doesn't mean I've forgotten what it's like to have nothing. I still have dreams where I'm back in that cramped dorm room, eating ramen and wondering if I'm smart enough to make it. But you did make it. You're here, successful, wealthy, probably with women throwing themselves at you left and right. Are you jealous? The question caught her off guard, and heat flooded her cheeks. I'm not. That's not. Why would I be jealous? Because you're blushing, and you can't finish a sentence, and you're looking at me like you want to either kiss me or hit me. His smile was soft, teasing, so familiar it made her heart ache. I want to hit you, she said, but there was no conviction in it. Liar. The word hung between them, loaded with implication, because she was lying, and they both knew it. She wanted to kiss him so badly it felt like a physical ache, wanted to close the distance between them and find out if his lips still tasted like home. This is crazy, she whispered. Probably. We're not kids anymore. We can't just pick up where we left off. I don't want to pick up where we left off, Ethan said, his voice growing more intense. Those kids made promises they couldn't keep and hurt each other in ways they didn't understand. I want to start over, as the people we are now. And who are we now? I don't know yet. That's what we'd be finding out. Alana closed her eyes, trying to quiet the war raging in her chest. The practical part of her brain was screaming warnings about heartbreak, about incompatibility, about the very real possibility that this was just nostalgia wrapped in expensive cologne. But her heart was singing a different song, one she'd tried to silence for 18 years. When she opened her eyes, Ethan was watching her with an expression so tender it made her breath catch. What are you thinking? He asked. I'm thinking that you were always better at talking me into things that were probably bad ideas. Was I? Like what? Like sneaking out to see the midnight movie. Like that time you convinced me to skip school so we could go to the lake. Like... She stopped, the memory hitting her unexpectedly. Like what? Like the night you kissed me for the first time. I told you it was a bad idea, that it would change everything between us. It did change everything. Yes, it did. They looked at each other across the small kitchen, and Alana could feel the weight of that long-ago kiss, the sweetness of it, the way it had opened a door neither of them had known how to walk through. Are you going to let me kiss you again? Ethan asked, his voice rough with want. The question sent heat spiraling through her body. She should say no. She should ask him to leave, give herself time to think clearly, protect the life she'd built from the chaos he represented. Instead, she heard herself whisper, yes. He moved slowly, giving her every chance to change her mind. His hands came up to frame her face, thumbs tracing the line of her cheekbones, and she could feel him trembling. Alana, he breathed, her name a prayer on his lips. Stop talking, she said, and pulled him down to meet her. The kiss was nothing like the sweet, tentative one they'd shared at 17. This was fire and need, and 18 years of longing condensed into a single moment. His lips were soft but demanding, and she could taste the tea on his tongue, could feel the desperate way his fingers tangled in her hair. She kissed him back with everything she had, pouring years of hurt and hope and love into the connection between them. This was dangerous, reckless, probably the worst decision she'd made in years. It was also the most right thing she'd felt in forever. The morning light has a way of making everything clear and terrifying. Alana woke to sunlight streaming through her bedroom window and the unfamiliar weight of an arm draped across her waist. For a moment, she lay perfectly still, her mind struggling to process the warmth pressed against her back, the scent of expensive cologne mixed with something purely masculine that made her stomach flutter. Ethan. The memories flooded back in a rush, the kiss in her kitchen that had led to desperate hands and whispered confessions, the way he'd looked at her like she was something precious and rare, the gentle urgency with which they'd rediscovered each other in the soft lamplight of her bedroom. She'd given herself to him completely, holding nothing back, and now in the harsh reality of morning, panic was setting in. Good morning. His voice was rough with sleep, and she could feel his lips brush against her shoulder. Oh, God, she breathed, covering her face with her hands. What did we do? Ethan shifted behind her, propping himself up on his elbow. We took a chance. We were honest with each other. We slept together on the first night you came back into my life. Alana sat up abruptly, clutching the sheet to her chest. This is exactly what I said I wouldn't do. Alana, look at me. His voice was patient, understanding, which somehow made it worse. She turned to face him and her breath caught. He looked different in the morning light, softer, more human. His dark hair was messed from sleep and her fingers, and there was a contentment in his blue eyes that made her chest ache. Regrets? He asked quietly. That was the problem. She should have regrets. She should be mortified, should be kicking him out and rebuilding her walls higher than ever. But looking at him now, remembering the gentle way he'd touched her, the words of love he'd whispered against her skin, she couldn't bring herself to regret a single moment. That's not the point, she said instead. Isn't it? Because from where I'm lying, the only thing that matters is whether you're sorry it happened. Alana climbed out of bed, wrapping the sheet around herself like armor. She could feel his eyes following her as she moved to the window, looking out at the neighborhood coming to life. Mrs. Rodriguez was already opening her corner market, and the morning commuters were heading to the L station with their coffee and their determined expressions. I need to get ready for work, she said, not turning around. It's Saturday. I work every day. When's the last time you took a day off? The question caught her off guard. I don't know. Last Christmas, maybe. Carmen forced me to close the truck so we could have dinner at her place. That was 9 months ago. Some of us can't afford to take vacations whenever we feel like it. The words came out sharper than she'd intended, and she saw Ethan flinch in her peripheral vision. I wasn't criticizing, he said carefully. I was wondering if maybe, just this once, you could stay in bed with me for another hour. The simple request made her throat tight. When was the last time someone had wanted to just spend time with her? When was the last time she'd allowed herself the luxury of a lazy morning? I can't, she whispered. Can't or won't. She finally turned to face him, and the understanding in his expression nearly undid her. This is too much, too fast, she said. Last night was... God, Ethan, last night was incredible, but in the light of day I can see how crazy this is. We barely know each other anymore. So let's get to know each other. Let me take you to breakfast. I can't afford to eat at the places you eat. Then we'll eat at the places you eat. Alana, I don't care if we have coffee and donuts from a gas station as long as I'm with you. Despite herself, she smiled. You hate gas station coffee. I hate being without you more. The honesty in his voice made her chest ache. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this time could be different. But 18 years of self-protection were hard to overcome. What happens when you get bored, she asked, when the novelty of slumming it with the girl from the neighborhood wears off? Ethan was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was deadly serious. Is that really what you think, that this is some kind of game to me? I don't know what to think. Yesterday I was just the woman who served you a hamburger. Today I'm what? Your girlfriend? Your project? Your walk down memory lane? You're the woman I never stopped loving. The words hit her like a physical blow, and she had to grip the windowsill to keep her knees from buckling. Don't say that. Why not? It's true. Because love isn't enough. The admission tore from her throat. Love doesn't pay rent or fix broken food truck engines or make sure the health inspector doesn't shut you down. Love doesn't bridge the gap between your penthouse and my one-bedroom apartment. Maybe not, but it's a start. Alana closed her eyes, fighting back tears. I can't be your charity case, Ethan. I can't be the poor girl you rescue because it makes you feel good about yourself. Look at me. His voice was sharp now, commanding. Look at me and tell me that's what you think last night was about. She opened her eyes to find him standing beside the bed, naked and unashamed and beautiful in the morning light, but it was the pain in his eyes that stopped her cold. You think I came here to play savior? He asked. You think I've spent 18 years thinking about you because I wanted to feel magnanimous? I don't know why you came here. I came here because seeing you again reminded me that I've been sleepwalking through my life. I came here because you're the only person who's ever made me feel truly alive. I came here because I love you, and I'm tired of pretending that I don't. The raw emotion in his voice cracked something open inside her chest. And what if I can't love you back? She whispered. What if I'm too scared, too damaged, too proud? Then I'll wait, however long it takes. That's not fair to you. Let me decide what's fair to me. They stared at each other across the small bedroom, the morning light casting everything in sharp relief. Alana could see the determination in his face, the love he wasn't trying to hide anymore, the patience that had always been his greatest strength. I have to open the truck, she said finally. Okay, you should probably go. Okay. But neither of them moved. They stood frozen in the space between courage and fear, between the past that had hurt them and the future that terrified them. Ethan? Yeah? Will you come by later after I close? The smile that spread across his face was like sunrise. Nothing would keep me away. Sometimes the people you love most are the ones who challenge you hardest. The lunch rush at the food truck was particularly brutal that Saturday. Alana moved through the motions mechanically, taking orders, flipping burgers, making change, but her mind was elsewhere, replaying every moment of the night before and the morning after. Her skin still tingled where Ethan had touched her, and she could still taste him on her lips. Girl, you're glowing, Carmen observed, leaning against the service window during a brief lull. Her best friend since high school was petite and fierce, with short cropped hair and the kind of direct gaze that missed nothing. Please tell me you finally got some. Carmen, Alana hissed, glancing around to make sure no customers were within earshot. I'm just saying it's been like 2 years since that disaster with Marcus, and you've been wound tighter than a spring ever since. So spill, who is he? Alana focused intently on cleaning the grill, not trusting herself to meet Carmen's eyes. There's nothing to spill. Liar. You're practically vibrating with post-sex energy, and you keep checking your phone every 5 seconds. I do not. Alana's phone buzzed, and she immediately reached for it, proving Carmen's point. Thinking about you. Hope your day is going well. In the simple message made her stomach flutter, and she found herself smiling despite her efforts to stay guarded. Oh my God, Carmen breathed, reading over her shoulder. Who the hell is E? And why are you smiling like a woman in love? I'm not... Alana Marie Brooks, don't you dare lie to me. I've known you for 12 years, and I have never seen you look like this over a text message. Before Alana could deflect further, a familiar black Mercedes pulled up to the curb. Her heart jumped into her throat as Ethan climbed out, looking devastatingly handsome in dark jeans and a navy blue sweater that brought out his eyes. Holy shit, Carmen whispered. Please tell me that's E. Carmen? Because that man is fine as hell, and he's looking at you like you hung the moon. Ethan approached the window with a smile that was both confident and slightly nervous. Good afternoon, ladies. Afternoon, Carmen replied, her voice dripping with curiosity. I'm Carmen, Alana's best friend and business partner. And you are? Ethan Walker. He extended his hand through the window. It's nice to meet you, Carmen. Alana's told me a lot about you. Carmen shook his hand, her eyes widening slightly. Walker, as in Walker Development Group? That's me. Well, damn. Carmen looked between them, pieces clicking into place. This is definitely not what I expected when I told you to get laid. Carmen. Alana's face burned with embarrassment, but Ethan just laughed. I like her, he said to Alana. She's protective of you. She's a pain in the ass, Alana muttered, but there was affection in her voice. The finest pain in the ass you'll ever meet, Carmen corrected cheerfully. So, Mr. Millionaire Developer, what are your intentions with my girl here? Carmen! Alana wanted to disappear into the floor of the food truck, but Ethan met Carmen's challenging gaze steadily. To prove that I'm worthy of a second chance. The sincerity in his voice made Carmen's expression soften slightly. Good answer, but I've got my eye on you, pretty boy. Hurt her, and I'll make your life very complicated. Understood. Good. Now what can we get you? And please tell me you're not one of those rich guys who only eats quinoa and sadness. Ethan grinned. Actually, I was hoping Alana might be free for a late lunch, somewhere that doesn't involve serving food through a window. Alana's automatic refusal died on her lips when she saw the hopeful expression on his face. I can't just leave in the middle of the day. Actually, you can, Carmen interjected. It's been slow since the construction workers cleared out, and I can handle things solo for a few hours. Go, live a little. Carmen, girl, when's the last time a man that fine asked you to lunch? Go. That's an order from your business partner. Alana looked between her best friend's encouraging smile and Ethan's patient hope, feeling the familiar war between duty and desire raging in her chest. Where would we go? She asked cautiously. Wherever you want. Your choice completely. She studied his face, looking for any sign that he was humoring her, that he expected her to choose somewhere expensive so he could play the generous benefactor, but all she saw was genuine openness. There's a little place in Little Village, she said slowly. Nothing fancy, just good Mexican food and strong coffee. Sounds perfect. It's not your kind of place. My kind of place is wherever you are. The simple statement made her heart skip, and she saw Carmen's expression melt completely. Okay, that's it, Carmen announced. You're officially my favorite person today. Take our girl and feed her something that isn't leftover truck food. 20 minutes later, Alana found herself sliding into a worn vinyl booth at Abuela Rosa's, a family-run restaurant that had been serving the neighborhood for 30 years. The walls were covered with faded photographs and colorful papel picado, and the air smelled like cumin and fresh tortillas. Ethan looked completely out of place and completely at ease at the same time. He studied the handwritten menu with genuine interest while Alana watched him nervously. Second thoughts? She asked when he caught her staring. About lunch? No. About you? Never. This isn't your scene, Ethan. You don't have to pretend. Stop. His voice was gentle but firm. Stop assuming you know what I'm thinking or feeling. This place is great. The food smells incredible, the atmosphere is warm and welcoming, and I'm sitting across from the most beautiful woman in Chicago. What more could I want? A tablecloth that doesn't have stains on it? I don't care about tablecloths. Silverware that matches? Alana. He reached across the table and took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. I care about you. Everything else is just details. She wanted to argue, wanted to point out all the ways this world was beneath him, but the earnestness in his eyes stopped her. Maybe she was the one with the hang-ups about their differences. Maybe she was the one creating barriers that didn't need to exist. Okay, she said quietly. Okay. I'll try to stop assuming the worst about your motives. Thank you. The waitress, Mrs. Rodriguez's teenage granddaughter, appeared at their table with a shy smile. Hola, Alana. The usual? Actually, I'll try something different today, Alana said, surprising herself. What's good? The mole is my abuela's specialty. And the gentleman? Ethan looked to Alana. What would you recommend? The carnitas are incredible, and if you're feeling adventurous, try the horchata. Then that's what I'll have. As the waitress walked away, Alana shook her head in wonder. You just ordered food you've never tried based on my recommendation. Is that strange? Most people in your position would want to know exactly what they're getting, would probably ask about ingredients and preparation methods. I trust you. The simple statement hit her harder than any declaration of love. Trust. When had she last truly trusted anyone? When had anyone trusted her enough to follow her lead blindly? Ethan. Yeah, I'm scared. I know. So am I. What if we're making a mistake? What if we're not? She squeezed his hand and for the first time in 18 years, let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, love could be enough after all. Every love story has a moment when everything falls apart. This was theirs. 3 weeks later, Alana was beginning to believe in fairy tales again. Ethan had become a constant presence in her life, showing up at the food truck during slow periods with coffee and conversation, texting her good morning messages that made her smile despite herself, taking her to small neighborhood restaurants where they talked for hours about everything and nothing. He'd kept his word about meeting her where she was. No fancy restaurants, no expensive gifts that would make her uncomfortable, no attempts to improve her life. Just time, attention, and the kind of gentle courtship that made her remember why she'd fallen in love with him in the first place. Tonight, they were curled up on her couch, watching an old movie on her laptop and sharing a bowl of popcorn. Ethan's arm was around her shoulders, and she felt safe and content in a way she hadn't experienced in years. I have to travel next week, he said, during a commercial break, his fingers playing idly with her hair. Just for a few days. Project in Detroit. Okay, she said, though something cold settled in her stomach. Come with me. The casual suggestion made her stiffen in his arms. What? Come with me. We could make a long weekend of it, see the city, spend some real time together without work getting in the way. Alana sat up, putting distance between them. Ethan, I can't just take off for a long weekend. I have a business to run. Carmen could handle things for a few days, right? You said yourself she's perfectly capable. That's not the point. Then what is the point? She stood up, pacing to the window. The point is that some of us can't just drop everything and jet off to another city whenever we feel like it. It's 3 days, not 3 months. 3 days of lost revenue. 3 days where I'm not there to make sure everything runs smoothly. 3 days where you're not in complete control of every aspect of your life, Ethan finished quietly. The observation stung because it was true. Control is what keeps me afloat. Control is what's keeping you from really living. Alana spun to face him, anger flaring hot in her chest. Easy words from someone who's never had to worry about where his next meal was coming from. That's not fair, and you know it. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're asking me to risk everything I've built so we can play house in Detroit for a weekend. Ethan stood up, his expression growing frustrated. I'm asking you to take a chance, to trust that the world won't end if you're not micromanaging every detail of your life for 72 hours. Trust, she laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's rich, coming from you. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Forget it. No, don't do that. Don't shut down on me. If you have something to say, say it. The challenge in his voice broke something open inside her, and 18 years of carefully contained hurt came pouring out. So you want to talk about trust? Fine, I trusted you once, and you disappeared from my life for 18 years. I trusted that our friendship meant something, that the promises we made mattered, and I ended up waiting for someone who never came back. That's not what happened, and you know it, do I? Because all I know is that you left and now you're back, and you want me to drop everything and follow you again. What happens when this little nostalgia trip gets boring? When you remember why you left the first time? This isn't nostalgia. His voice was sharp with pain. What we have is real. Is it? Or am I just a convenient way to ease your conscience about the past? The words hung in the air like poison, and she saw him flinch as if she'd struck him physically. You don't mean that, he said quietly. But she was too far gone to stop, too scared and too hurt to think rationally. Don't I? You show up in your expensive car with your expensive clothes and your expensive life, and suddenly the poor girl from the neighborhood becomes interesting again. Tell me that's not at least partly about guilt. Stop. His voice was deadly calm, but she could see the fury building in his eyes. Stop projecting your own fears onto me and deal with what's really going on here. Which is what, exactly? You're terrified. You're terrified that if you let yourself be happy, if you let yourself love me the way I know you do, something will happen to take it away. So you're sabotaging us before we can really begin. I'm being realistic. You're being a coward. The word hit her like a slap, and she felt her carefully constructed composure crumble. Get out, she whispered. Alana, I said, get out. The words tore from her throat, raw and desperate. Get out of my apartment. Get out of my life and go back to your perfect world where everything is clean and simple, and you don't have to deal with complicated women who have trust issues. Ethan stared at her for a long moment, and she could see the exact moment when he stopped fighting. Fine, he said quietly. If that's what you want, it's what I want. He gathered his jacket from the chair, moving with careful dignity. At the door he paused, his hand on the handle. For what it's worth, he said without turning around. I never left you, Alana. You left me. Tonight you're leaving me again. The door closed behind him with a soft click, and Alana stood alone in her living room, surrounded by the remnants of their evening together. The movie was still playing on her laptop. The popcorn bowl sat half empty on the coffee table, and the throw pillow still held the impression of his body. She sank onto the couch and buried her face in her hands, finally allowing the tears to come. He was right, and she knew it. She was scared, terrified of trusting him, terrified of losing control, terrified of believing that this time could be different. But most of all, she was terrified that she'd just thrown away the best thing that had ever happened to her. Her phone buzzed with a text message, and her heart leaped. But it wasn't from Ethan. Saw his car leave. You okay? See Carmen. Her best friend who'd been watching their relationship unfold from the beginning, who'd been rooting for them even when Alana couldn't root for herself. Alana typed back through her tears, I think I just made the biggest mistake of my life. Want to talk about it? Tomorrow. I need to think. Okay. But Lana, sometimes thinking is overrated. Sometimes you just have to feel. Alana set her phone aside and looked around her empty apartment. For 3 weeks, it had felt like a home. Now it just felt like a place to hide. Outside, Ethan sat in his car in the parking lot, staring up at her window and wondering if some bridges were meant to stay burned. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find what matters most. The rain started 3 days after Ethan left. It began as a light drizzle on Tuesday morning, but quickly turned into the kind of relentless downpour that turned Chicago streets into rivers and made operating a food truck nearly impossible. Alana stood in the doorway of her truck, watching potential customers hurry past with their heads down and umbrellas bent against the wind. She hadn't heard from Ethan since their fight. No texts, no calls, no unexpected appearances at her window. The silence was deafening, and she found herself checking her phone obsessively, hope and pride warring in her chest every time it remained dark. Carmen had tried to talk sense into her, of course. Girl, you need to call him. Apologize. Fix this mess before it's too late. But Alana's pride was a stubborn thing, built from years of protecting herself from disappointment, and beneath the pride was a fear so deep she could barely acknowledge it. What if he didn't answer? What if 3 days of silence had been enough for him to realize she was right, that they were too different, that love wasn't enough to bridge the gap between their worlds? By Thursday, the rain had turned vicious. The weather service issued flood warnings, and Alana made the difficult decision to close the truck early. She was securing the last of the equipment when her phone rang. Carmen? She answered, shouting over the wind. Lana, thank God. I've been trying to reach you for an hour. There's been an accident. The words hit her like ice water. What kind of accident? Car accident. On Lakeshore Drive near the museum. They said it was a black Mercedes. And I know Ethan drives. Which hospital? Alana was already running toward her car, her heart hammering against her ribs. Northwestern Memorial. But Lana, I don't know if it's him. Alana hung up and drove through the storm like a woman possessed, her hands shaking on the steering wheel. "Please," she prayed to whatever deity might be listening. "Please don't let it be too late. Please don't let the last words I said to him be in anger." The hospital was chaos. Emergency vehicles filled the ambulance bay, and the waiting room was packed with people seeking shelter from the storm. Alana pushed through to the information desk, her clothes soaked, her hair plastered to her head. "Ethan Walker," she gasped. "I need to know about Ethan Walker. Car accident, Lakeshore Drive." The nurse's expression was carefully neutral. "Are you family?" Alana's voice cracked. "I'm the woman who loves him. Please." Something in her desperation must have moved the nurse, because she consulted her computer screen. "Room 412, 4th floor, but visiting hours." Alana was already running toward the elevators. She found him sitting on the edge of a hospital bed, very much alive and arguing with a doctor about discharge papers. His left arm was in a sling, and there was a bandage over his right eyebrow, but he was breathing and talking and beautifully, wonderfully alive. "Sir, you have a concussion and 3 cracked ribs," the doctor was saying. "I really think you should stay for observation." "I'm fine," Ethan insisted. "I just want to go home." "You're an idiot," Alana said from the doorway. Both men turned toward her, and the look that crossed Ethan's face nearly brought her to her knees. Surprise, pain, hope, love, all of it flickering across his features in the space of a heartbeat. Alana. Her name was barely a whisper on his lips. The doctor glanced between them, reading the situation with practiced skill. "I'll give you two some privacy, but Mr. Walker, I meant what I said about those ribs." When they were alone, the silence stretched between them like an ocean. Alana stood dripping in the doorway, afraid to move closer, afraid he might disappear if she took her eyes off him. "Are you okay?" she finally managed. "I'll live. What are you doing here?" "Carmen heard about the accident. She called me. And you came." There was wonder in his voice, as if he couldn't quite believe it. "Of course I came. Did you think I wouldn't? I didn't know what to think. The last time we spoke, you told me to get out of your life." The reminder hit her like a physical blow. She stepped into the room, closing the door behind her, and finally let herself look at him, really look at him. The bandage, the sling, the careful way he was holding himself to protect his ribs. "I could have lost you," she whispered. "I could have lost you, and the last thing I said to you was—" Her voice broke and tears spilled over. "God, Ethan, I'm so sorry." "Hey." He started to reach for her with his good arm, then stopped himself. "Don't cry. I'm okay." "No, you're not. And it's my fault. If I hadn't been such a stubborn, scared—" "Alana, stop. The accident wasn't your fault. I was distracted, driving too fast in the rain, and I hit a patch of standing water. It had nothing to do with our fight." "Didn't it?" She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Because I think you were upset, and I think you were driving in a storm, because you were trying to get away from thinking about us, and I think you're giving yourself too much credit for my bad judgment." But his voice was gentle, teasing almost. "Though you're right about one thing. I was upset. I was wrong." The admission tore from her throat. "About everything. I was scared and I lashed out and I said things I didn't mean." "Which things didn't you mean?" The question was quiet, careful, but she could hear the vulnerability underneath. "The part about guilt, about nostalgia, about you not really caring about me." She took a step closer, then another, until she was standing right in front of him. "I know you care. I can see it in your eyes, feel it in the way you touch me. I was just too afraid to believe it." Afraid of what? Of being happy, of trusting that something good could last, of believing that I deserved to be loved by someone like you, someone like me, someone extraordinary, someone who could have anyone and chose me. Ethan was quiet for a long moment, studying her face with those patient blue eyes. "You want to know why I chose you?" he asked finally. She nodded, not trusting her voice. "Because you're brave enough to build something from nothing. Because you're loyal to the people you love. Because you make me laugh and you challenge me, and you see through all the bullshit to the person I really am underneath." His good hand came up to cup her cheek. "Because you're not someone I chose, Alana. You're someone I recognized. The other half of myself that I'd been missing for 18 years. The tears came harder now, but they were different tears. Cleaner somehow, healing instead of hurting. I love you," she whispered. "I've always loved you, and I'm tired of being afraid of it." "Say it again." "I love you, Ethan Walker. Cracked ribs, concussion and all." He pulled her down with his good arm, and she was careful not to jar his injured ribs as she settled beside him on the narrow hospital bed. When he kissed her, it tasted like rain and second chances and coming home. "Don't ever scare me like that again," she murmured against his lips. "I'll try not to. But Alana? Yeah? Next time you want to push me away because you're scared, just tell me you're scared. Don't make me leave. I spent 18 years away from you. I don't want to waste another minute. She kissed him again, deeper this time, pouring all her love and regret and hope into the connection between them, and finally, let herself believe that some love stories do get their happy ending. 2 years later, the morning sun cast long shadows across Palmer Street as Alana walked slowly down the familiar sidewalk, her hand intertwined with Ethan's. The neighborhood had changed since they were children, some houses renovated and gleaming, others still bearing the gentle wear of decades. But the yellow house on the corner, the one where Ethan had lived with his grandmother, looked exactly the same. I can't believe you bought it, she said softly, squeezing his fingers. I couldn't let someone else live in the place where we fell in love, Ethan replied, his voice warm with contentment. Besides, Mrs. Patterson from next door said the new owners were planning to tear it down and build condos. I couldn't let that happen. They paused in front of the house, and Alana could almost see their younger selves, 2 kids with big dreams and bigger hearts, believing the world was full of endless possibilities. In a way, they'd been right. The food truck business had flourished beyond her wildest dreams. What started as Mama's Kitchen had grown into a small empire. 3 trucks, a brick-and-mortar restaurant in Pilsen, and a catering company that was booked solid for the next 6 months. Carmen ran the day-to-day operations now, freeing Alana to focus on expanding their vision, while Ethan provided business guidance and unwavering support. Do you remember what you promised me? She asked, leaning against his shoulder. That I'd build you the most beautiful restaurant in the city, with big windows and your name on the sign. You kept that promise. Some promises are worth keeping, even if they take 20 years to fulfill. Brooks Kitchen occupied the corner spot in one of Ethan's newest developments, a mixed-use building that provided affordable housing upstairs and small business opportunities below. The restaurant's floor-to-ceiling windows looked out onto a pocket park, where families gathered for weekend picnics, and Alana's name gleamed in elegant gold letters above the entrance. But it wasn't the only promise he'd kept. Ethan dropped her hand and turned to face her, his blue eyes serious and tender. There's actually something else I promised you once. What's that? Instead of answering, he dropped to one knee right there on the sidewalk, where they'd shared their first kiss, pulling a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. Alana's breath caught in her throat, her free hand flying to cover her mouth. I promised you that I'd come back, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion swimming in his eyes. I promised that I'd prove I was worthy of a second chance. And I promised myself that if I was lucky enough to win your heart again, I'd never let you go. The ring was perfect, a simple solitaire that caught the morning light like a star. It wasn't ostentatious or flashy, it was elegant and timeless, just like the love it represented. Alana Brooks, Ethan continued, his voice growing stronger. You are my first love, my second chance, and my forever home. You challenge me, inspire me, and make me want to be the man you deserve. Will you marry me? Through her tears, she could see Mrs. Patterson peeking through her curtains next door, probably remembering 2 teenagers who used to sit on these same front steps, sharing dreams and stolen kisses. Yes, Alana whispered, then louder. Yes, of course, yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger with hands that shook slightly, then stood and swept her into his arms, spinning her around as she laughed through her tears. When he set her down, he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her with the same desperate tenderness as that night in the hospital, as if he still couldn't quite believe she was his. I love you, she murmured against his lips. I love you too. Always have, always will. As they walked back toward their car, not the Mercedes anymore, but a practical SUV that could haul catering supplies and someday car seats, Alana caught her reflection in a window. The woman looking back at her was different from the guarded, scared person who'd served hamburgers to a stranger 4 years ago. This woman glowed with confidence and love, secure in who she was and where she belonged. Her phone buzzed with a text from Carmen. Girl, please tell me you said yes. The suspense is killing me. Alana held up her left hand to show Ethan the sparkling ring. How did she know? Who do you think helped me pick it out? Carmen knew. Carmen, Mrs. Rodriguez from the corner store. Half your regular customers, probably 3/4 of the neighborhood. Ethan grinned. I may have gotten a little carried away asking for opinions. And they all approved? They all love you, just like I do. That evening they sat on the fire escape outside Alana's apartment. Their apartment now, though they were planning to move to the house on Palmer Street after the wedding. The city spread out before them, lights twinkling like earthbound stars, and Alana marveled at how different everything looked from this same spot where they used to dream about their futures. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd found each other sooner?" she asked, her head resting on his shoulder. "Sometimes, but I think we needed those years apart to become the people we are now, the people who could make this work. No regrets, only one." Ethan's arm tightened around her. "I regret that your mum isn't here to see us get married. She always said we'd end up together eventually." "She did?" "The last time I saw her before I left for college, she pulled me aside and said, 'That girl loves you with her whole heart, Ethan Walker. Don't you dare break it.' I promised her I wouldn't. You kept that promise too. I intend to keep all my promises to you, starting with this one." He turned to face her, his expression serious. "I promise to love you every day for the rest of my life. I promise to support your dreams, even when they scare me. I promise to never leave again, no matter how hard things get. And I promise to remind you every single day how extraordinary you are." Alana wiped away the tears that had started falling again. "I promise to let you. I promise to stop being afraid of being happy. I promise to trust in us in this, in forever." As the sun set over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, they sat together on the fire escape where it all began, no longer two lost souls searching for home. They had found it in each other. 6 months later, at their wedding reception in the restaurant that bore her name, Alana raised her glass for a toast. "They say you can't go home again, but sometimes home isn't a place, it's a person. Sometimes love gets lost, but if it's real love, if it's meant to be, it finds its way back. Ethan and I took the long way around, but we made it." She looked at her husband, and smiled through happy tears. "To second chances, to keeping promises, and to love stories that refuse to end." The crowd cheered, Carmen wiped her eyes, and somewhere in the background, an old soul song played, the same one that had been playing the night they first kissed. Some things, the best things, really don't change. What did this story teach you about love, forgiveness, and second chances? Your participation means a lot to the channel. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.